Hello, one and all. I hope you had a wonderful holiday season. I hope your Christmas and your holiday festivities went well and are joyful and eventful because news just broke that is going to maybe turn this into a downer. And as we thought, it wasn't going to stop. As we thought, there's no stopping this gravy train unless we, the people, actually confront this and stop it ourselves. But the continuation of the money laundering that is Ukraine aid fund still continues on. Still continues on, folks. So here is Mark Carney announcing a pledge for another $2.5 billion in economic aid to Ukraine during Zelensky's stopover in Canada. So they were at in Halifax. $2.5 billion, not million, billion with a B, which I know that seems very little compared to what the United States has already given them, what other countries have already given them. We, I think, gave them a total now of like 45 billion. I think that's the calculation. Correct me if I'm wrong. That was the last I checked. But another $2.5 billion at a time when people already struggling as is, and even more so during the holiday season. Food bank lineups are a mess right now. There is a continuation of this downturning within our country, and somehow Carney just pledges $2.5 billion of our tax dollars out of thin air to give to his addict, Volodymyr Zelenskyy. That is just insane, folks. Insane. Coming right after Christmas. Right after when normal Canadians, hardworking Canadians, are struggling to put food on their table, to heat their homes, to make sure, their kids get fed. They're struggling with the basic needs of survival, and we're able to get $2.5 billion like that right after Christmas. Wow. So here it goes on. This is from the National Post saying this. Prime Minister Mark Carney announced more financial aid. Got to put that in quotations because we know what we're gonna expose what this financial aid's really about for Ukraine ahead of its meeting with President Volodymyr Zelenskyy in Halifax on Saturday. The two met at the city's airport where Zelenskyy landed en route to peace talks scheduled with U.S. President Donald Trump on Sunday. He arrived from Kiev. Then at least one person was killed and more than 24 injured in a series of Russian airstrikes overnight. So while he was traveling, there was bombardment of Russian airstrikes. Carney called the latest attack barbarianism and said it underscores the importance of supporting Ukraine and helping foster a just and lasting peace and a true reconciliation. We're at 4 years now, almost 4 years, maybe 5 years now of this war going on. And every single time, every single opportunity we have had to end this war, to end this conflict, to actually come to a peace negotiation, the UK, the European nations, Canada, the United States, our military-industrial complex, and NATO have ferociously went against all these peace talks. Every single time. Zelenskyy wanted this resolved immediately. And we knew what happened the first round of peace talks, where Boris Johnson, who was then the Prime Minister of the UK, went over to Zelenskyy and demanded him to not have these peace talks. Keep this war going. So, I don't believe for a damn second any of our leaders, any of our Western leaders that have been engaged in war for how many decades now, since I've been on this planet, for me to think that, we're doing this for the intention of lasting peace and true reconciliation. They don't give a rat's ass about that. Okay? The whole reason this war is even starting is because they want to overthrow Ukraine in 2014 thanks to Victoria Nuland and Jake Sullivan and the Obama administration, they went overthrow the Ukrainian government. They installed this comedian to play as the president of this country, to lead Ukrainians into a war against Russia so that the NATO allies can fight a war with Russia using Ukraine as cannon fodder. So the people that are telling you about lasting peace, they never wanted peace to begin with. And to paraphrase what Julian Assange always reminds us, the point of these wars is continuous. They don't want it to end. They don't want a resolution, because that's when the money train stops. That's when they stop losing their power. They never want peace. Peace is the worst thing that the military-industrial complex, the NATO allies, all these barbarian moneymakers, they would never want peace. They never want people to actually engage in proper civil discourse. That's why they have to do these wars. That's why they have to manufacture all this terror. Because in order to have a war on terror, you have to first create it. To that end, Carney pledged another $2.5 billion worth of economic assistance that helps unlock financing from the International Monetary Fund, from the World Bank, from the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development to begin this process of rebuilding. So, we're paying to rebuild a country that we used as a proxy to try to defeat Russia. Russia's crushing it. I hate to admit it. Ukraine is losing this war immensely. And that we're taking that money that we used to engage in the war, and now they're going to take more of it to reconstruct Ukraine. And I'm going to show you later in the segment here why the reconstruction is it's completely false. They're not interested in reconstructing Ukraine. They're there for the money opportunity that this gives. Just like how we never cared about Afghanistan or Iraq or Vietnam, if you want to go back there. All these wars that we've been engaged in and, helping and conflict resolution. Oh, we're trying to help the people. We're trying to give them peace and democracy. They never gave a damn about any of that. It's always about money. It's always about the transfer of money. It's always about the money that they get capitalizing off the death and disparity of other countries. That's why they keep manufacturing wars. That's why they keep manufacturing terror. That's why they have to keep us in such heightened, anger with each other, instead of just recognizing people as people and trying to survive this crazy nightmare. The real barbarians are not Ukrainians or Russians or us or Americans. The real barbarians, the real people engaged in barbarism, is people like Mark Carney. It's the ruling class. So here is Mark Carney welcoming Zelenskyy at the Halifax airport, and this was just one of the weirdest confrontations. Like, they know each other for a while now. They've engaged. It's not like a new conversation. They know each other. They know that there's a relationship between the two, but it just seems so weird. It just seems so uncomfortable that the two of them in the same room, they look so tense. Well, let's see this for ourselves.
Okay. Thanks so much. Good to see you, Mark. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Alors, merci, Monsieur le Président. Bienvenue au Canada, bienvenue à Halifax. Vous êtes parmi tes alliés, tes amis ici. Et le Canada va travailler sans relâche pour le peuple ukrainien, pour une paix juste et durable. Welcome. Thank you for taking this time. This at a crucial moment.
I mean, they looked so uncomfortable. Zelenskyy looks like he can want to be anywhere else except in front of Mark Carney. Like, it's just so wild. It's so wild. And of course, just the tableau of the, crazed lunatic addict that is Zelenskyy and the dealer that is Mark Carney. It's like a Christmas card right here. Like, I'm going to give you $2.5 billion and you can just do whatever you want with it. You are under investigation for corruption and conspiracy and treason and other international crimes right now. But here's $2.5 billion. Go nuts. Go nuts. Spend it on coke. Spend it on hookers and booze. Go buy some more real estate in the nice part of New Jersey. I don't care. It's just so crazy. It's so crazy. There's more.
In this process, under President Zelenskyy's leadership, we have the conditions, the possibility of a just and lasting peace. But that requires a willing Russia. And the barbarism that we saw overnight.
Yeah, we have the lasting peace. It's just Russia. Russia needs to get to the table. Russia's the one that needs to, bow down. Russia's the one that's stopping this, lasting peace that I've always envisioned. Me, Mark Carney. Yeah, it's Russia. It's not the fact that since 2014, we've been eyeing on Ukraine to take over and use them as a proxy since the ending of the Cold War. Okay? That's the whole purpose of all this. That is the whole purpose of why this is even happening. And for those who say, well, it was, February 2022 when Russia stormed in, they're only telling you part 3 of the story. There is a whole act way before all this. There's a whole act that you are not being told. And anyone that, brings that to attention, I've, mentioned it multiple times. I've said from the start that there's definitely more to this story than we're being told. And guess what? There was. And I bring that to attention. Of course, people shunned me down and said I was, spreading propaganda or I'm a Russian puppet or how dare you? You must be on the side of terrorists. And rah! Just absolutely insane. It's absolutely insane. And even now so, because Zelenskyy is under corruption trials and corruption charges, they're raiding his office. And we're still giving them more money. Still giving them more money.
The attack on Kyiv shows just how important it is that we stand with Ukraine during this difficult time and that we create the conditions for this just and lasting peace and a true reconstruction. And I want to underscore something that has happened in recent weeks is that the development of that possibility under your leadership and also the prospect of true prosperity for the Ukrainian people. I'll just finish with one point on Canada.
And in order to do all this, just remind you, this is the same guy that will go on stage, point at Canadians that he's supposed to lead and be in charge of and represent the country, point at you and say, you got to sacrifice more. You got to give up those, luxuries like food, air, water, heat, your house. Think of all the poor, starving Ukrainians like Zelenskyy. He's down to his last, $500,000 house. Oh my God. Think how troubled he is having to do all those photo shoots for GQ at a time of war. But you have to sacrifice more. You, the average Canadian that's already to the bone of barely surviving. Honest, this is sick. This is sick. Coming right after Christmas, nonetheless. They couldn't have waited till after the new year. They could have waited till after the holiday season, so Canadians can actually take a breather to say, the government isn't going to screw me even more. No. Right after Christmas, here's $2.5 billion right to Ukraine from you. And it's all about rebuilding. So they claim. But that's not the story. That's not the story here. So here is Mark Carney announcing on his X account here, Ukraine's cause, freedom, democracy, sovereignty, is Canada's cause. At this crucial juncture, we are reinforcing our support with the $2.5 billion in a new loan guarantee. I love how it's a loan. He has to reassure people, oh, it's just a loan. They're going to pay us back some point. Maybe never. Just like, Afghanistan, they're supposed to pay back those trillions of dollars we wasted over there. God's sakes. Yeah, it's a loan guarantee. You could trust these NATO allies. You could trust the military-industrial complex. They've lied to us for the last how many years and decades and screwed over millions of people, but come on. This time they actually mean it. They're actually going to be sincere about this loan. And other mechanisms to help Ukraine secure a just and lasting peace and help to recover and rebuild. Yeah, so that's Mark Carney. That's his Yuletide little treat there, giving Canada the finger once again to support Ukraine, because we know that Mark Carney deeply is invested into Ukraine because there's a money opportunity to this. Just like all the other wars that have been participated in and manufactured, there wouldn't be this callousness of trying to steal the country's resources and our finances if there wasn't some sort of sick, twisted, evil, nefarious money laundering opportunity that comes with this. You really think that they care about freedom, democracy, and sovereignty? They don't even care about our democracy or our sovereignty. And you know that Mark Carney doesn't give a damn about our freedoms. We know that with the upcoming bills that are being passed. He doesn't give a damn about that. So this is from the Government of Canada website. Let me back out a bit here. It says, Ukrainian people endure another winter of Russia aggression. Canada remains steadfast in its support for Ukraine. Building on Canada's strong support for Ukraine, the Prime Minister today announces new measures to support a just and lasting peace. Canada is announcing an additional $2.5 billion commitment for Ukraine, including financing that will enable the International Monetary Fund to lend Ukraine an additional $8.5 billion as part of the extending financial program, Canada's participation in extension and expand debt service suspension for Ukraine. Isn't that amazing? Canada's forgiving the debt of Ukraine, but Canadians that are going bankrupt, that are dealing with mass amounts of debt, that have to, put groceries on their credit card because they can't afford basic necessities, they're not getting forgiven. The banks are going after them. The banks are ferociously going after them because our money's gone. You got to pay more in taxes. You got to sacrifice more because the money is going to be sent to Ukraine. Don't you care about others? Don't you care about allies? A loan guaranteed up to $1.3 billion in 2026 to the World Bank's International Bank of Reconstruction and Development to support Ukraine's reconstruction. Wow. So we caused a war, we financed that war, and then we're taking more money to rebuild the country that we purposely destroyed. But you should feel good about this because you're helping your ally. You need good friends. And what better friends to have than the most corrupted nation in Eastern Europe? It's amazing. Our allies seem to be the worst people you can imagine to be allies with. When you talk about Ukraine or Israel or any of the other countries we finance through blackmail and deception. Because that's what good friends do, right? So here's this. I found this so hilarious. So I took this screen grab. This is from CTV News. This is from their website. And you can see on the website, it's an article about the anti-corruption agencies that are raiding the parliament in Ukraine. which I'm surprised we don't have an anti-corruption agency. Honest to God, that would be amazing. Can you imagine anti-corruption agencies raiding the parliament offices here in Canada? That would be a treat. But here, Ukraine anti-corruption agency ties to raid in parliament. So CTV News did this article. This is December 27th. At the same time, you could see the top there. Breaking news: Canada provide $2.5 billion in economic aid for Ukraine. The same article that's telling you how corrupted the nation is also breaking that the Prime Minister is giving them more money. I can't write comedy better than this. This is hilarious. This is hilarious. The same article that's pointing out how corrupted this country is, how corrupted Zelenskyy is, how this money laundering scheme is finally coming to light for people to realize that supporting Ukraine, all this financial aid that we've given them, is just a farce. The same article, they have the audacity to say, well, the Prime Minister's giving more money. And I said, CTV News, so blind, so corrupt, so utterly embarrassing. Because, you know, if I was working for them, if I was an intern, if I was a journalist, and I've toured through the CTV building, it's huge. I've seen where they do the national news. I've toured through that. I almost had an internship with them when I was in college, but that's another story. It's a long story with that. But imagine if you were working at CTV News, you were in charge of like writing up this website, and you saw this. You saw on top of the article that talks about how corrupt Ukraine is, announcing that the Prime Minister is giving them more money. I don't know how anyone could sit there and go, oh, well, you know, that's it. That's politics. That's your money. That's your money going away to Ukraine, even though CTV News knows how corrupted the nation is. That is just hilarious. It's hilarious, but it's also sad. And it just goes to show you that our mainstream media, everyone points at, you know, American media for being so bad. Our mainstream media is no picnic. Because, wow, they know how corrupt it is, but yet they're still okay with the Prime Minister stealing your tax dollars and giving it to them. That's like giving a chainsaw to someone you know is a serial killer. Oh, it's okay. I'm sure they're going to use it for other purposes, right? I'm sure they're just going to cut down a tree with it. They're not going to, you know, do anything wrong. Here's this guy, John Paul Berg, says, in Ukraine, anti-corruption agencies attempt to raid parliament and is prevented by security forces for the Zelenskyy regime. The same day today, central banker WEF member, Prime Minister usurper Mark Carney pledges another $2.5 billion from the Canadian taxpayer. Canada, you're getting blanked. It's never been more evident. Mark Carney didn't leave his coffin in Europe to help the peasantry. He represents a group of international oligarchs who are hell-bent on maintaining their power to extent that, and they're willing to provoke World War III against Russia. And that is what I've been saying about this. Mark Carney is not your savior. Mark Carney does not represent Canada. Mark Carney assumed the position of prime ministership because of how corrupted the entire parliament system is in this country. That's the reason we have this guy. A guy who came off the boat from England that we don't even know really anything about him. He even lied the other day when talking to Donna Friesen about where he lived. First it was Edmonton. Now it was the Northwest Territories. Oh, now it's out in BC. He doesn't know where he grew up in Canada. Wealth Moose pointed this out, and this is what they will not tell you, and this is why Mark Carney is giving the finger to Canada and still giving them more money, even though they're massively corrupted. Because Brookfield magically landed a $4 billion Ukrainian reconstruction contract. What did I tell you? There's money to be made. They wouldn't do war if there wasn't money to be made. They wouldn't do it. They don't care about sovereignty. They don't care about people. They don't care about humanitarian aid whatsoever. But they will do it if there's a big, giant, greedy, bloodthirsty contract to be made from this. And that's why they also sent Cruella de Freeland over there to help reconstruct. Because we know how deeply corrupted she was when she was the deputy prime minister for Justin Trudeau. We know how deeply invested her family is when it comes to the neo-Nazi regimes and the Ukrainian just Azov battalion. We know all about that. So, obviously, Brookfield was involved in this. Right as Mark Carney confirms another $4 billion to from Canadian taxpayers to Ukraine. Totally a coincidence, I'm sure. Just like all the other coincidences that somehow enrich Brookfield. Canada deserves answers. So that's why they're doing this. That's why they're doing it. They don't give a crap about Ukraine. They don't care about sovereignty. This is not about being a good ally. This is about screwing over people, using them and abusing them to enrich themselves, which is the whole point of these wars, which is why many people, we thought after the horrific horrors that came out of the Iraq invasion and Afghanistan, we thought we'd be done. We thought that we grew from this, that we learned from the mistakes, that, we were not going to repeat the same flaws that America keeps doing. And yet, here we are. Here we are. We're doing more warfare. We, Canadians, the peacekeeping Canadians, are doing more warfare than, I would even say, some parts of America. That's insane. And this is why. This is why. So, this is kind of interesting. And not a lot of people know about this because they don't tell you about it, but it's a simple Google search. Like, the information is there. The information is there. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out why war exists, why this is happening, why this is continuing on, why for the last 4 years they have not gone to a peace deal. It's because they don't want a peace deal because it's going to wreck this. And this year it says direct conflict, industrial reconstruction, rebuilding Ukraine. Mark Carney is invested in 7 out of the 9 companies represented. So out of the 9 companies that are part of this reconstruction of Ukraine, after they completely destroyed it, Mark Carney, our prime minister, is invested in 7 of them. The Ukraine Rebuild Initiative is a large-scale effort to attract international investment for infrastructure, energy, and industrial reconstruction projects following the war. So just like how when we went to the Middle East, we destroyed Iraq and Afghanistan, and then we just got private contractors to go in and help rebuild those nations. We never did, but we rebuild those nations so that we can go in and steal their resources, which is exactly what we would do in a scenario like this. Exactly what they want to do with Ukraine. They've now destroyed it. They were going to throw Zelenskyy under the bus, but now I guess they need still Zelenskyy to maintain some position of power, even though he's a crook and he's a coke addict. But this is why. They want to steal the resources. They know that Ukraine has a lot of mineral wealth. They know that Ukraine has a lot of energy wealth. They know that Ukraine has a bunch of biolaboratories. So they want to destroy the nation, make it crumble, and then go in pretending that we're here to save you, we're here to rebuild, and take the resources. Just like we've done for the last how many years. And this is why I caught up to this. This is why from day one, I did not believe a thing that was coming out about the Ukraine war. I did not believe for a second. And once I started reading into this, once I figured out the prior to this war, when you look at the first and second acts of why Russia did what they did, it comes perfectly clear. This is another manufactured war for this purpose, for bloodthirsty, money-hungry psychopaths to take another advantage of another country and deprive them from their resources so they can make a quick buck. Leading the financial and strategic coordination are BlackRock and JP Morgan, which are co-managing the Ukrainian Development Fund to structure and deploy global capital. Other key companies involved include Brookfield, Westinghouse, Citigroup, Anon, Vestas, Honeywell, General Electric. Notably, Prime Minister Mark Carney holds shares in nearly all of these firms, raising a conflict of concerns as these companies directly profit from contracts and financing tied to the Ukraine construction efforts. So this is why he's going to keep doing this. And it's not going to stop until we realize this, until more and more people realize this and call him out. Because clearly CTV doesn't call him out. The mainstream media won't call him out. No one's bothering to even mention about this when he did his Christmas Day interview with Donna Friesen. They're not mentioning this. You can see next to this too. There's the list of all the companies. You can see you might not see the wording here, but all the green. So those are the companies that Mark Carney is invested in, has financial ties to, except for two. All the other ones he has deep financial ties to. So this is why he thinks of this as a loan. That he's going to steal from Canadians, use our money to pay for this, and then he's going to get money from it, and none of us are going to get a damn dime in return. That is what's so diabolical about all this. And of course, Mark Carney is leading the charge for this right after Christmas. And I just want to remind people about this. We've shown this numerous times before, but just a refresher, this is the country we are still supporting. So this is back 4 years ago. City News did this piece here about Ukraine being involved with neo-Nazis. And the Canadian soldiers that were stationed in Ukraine in 2018 were calling this out. They called the parliament directly, noting that Ukraine has a neo-Nazi problem. And what did the Canadian parliament do? Nothing. Because they were trying to ramp up this war. That's what all this was about. That's what Russiagate was about. Not only to stop President Trump from getting a second term, which obviously failed, but it was to ramp up this war because it's all manufactured from the get-go. So, just to remind people, this is what you're paying for.
We probably don't want to be rubbing shoulders with organized far-right militant groups that have, that are very open about it. I mean, you could go right now and view on YouTube their videos of their trainings. They're very forward symbolism. They're not hiding this stuff.
Canadian diplomats and soldiers in Ukraine took an unusual meeting in June of 2018, one that's now coming to light. It was a meeting with one of the paramilitary units raised to fight off the Russian invasion of Ukraine's eastern provinces. One problem, that unit, the Azov Battalion, has been linked to neo-Nazism, and the Canadian military knew.
Велику, могутню і соборну. Слава нації!
An Ottawa Citizen report says Canadian forces in Ukraine produced a briefing in 2017 saying members of the Azov Battalion identified themselves as Nazis. But the June 2018 meeting happened anyway, with a Canadian forces colonel and diplomatic staff attending.
So they knew about this since 2017. I'm sure probably before this. Because, again, it's not rocket science to figure out about Ukraine. and why they're so deeply invested. It's not rocket science. You don't need a fancy degree. You just need courage and the ability to go on Google and search this for yourself. They knew about this since 2017. And yet here we are in 2025, still giving them money. Still thinking that this is about, diplomacy, helping an ally, achieving independence, humanitarianism, freedom, sovereignty. Wow.
Italian published pictures on social media saying Canadian representatives expressed their hopes for, quote, further fruitful cooperation. In a statement, the Department of National Defense says they are strongly opposed to the glorification of Nazism and all forms of racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, intolerance, and extremism, adding, our official position remains that we are not, nor will we be providing support to Azov and affiliated entities.
And that right there is a big giant lie, because that's exactly what we're doing. Exactly what we're doing. We're serving the neo-Nazis. We're serving the neo-Nazis. So, that, just to keep that in mind. Again, this is from 4 years ago. This is from 4 years ago. And people still have not caught on. People still don't understand that none of the things that they're saying about sovereignty, diplomacy, and democracy, that's all buzzwords to trick you because they think you're idiots. All it takes is a quick Google search to find this information, to realize how insanely BS all this is. How fake and manufactured all this is from the get-go. And we're giving them $2.5 billion more for rebuilding. And now we know that the reason they're doing it is because Mark Carney has companies invested and he's going to get a huge whopping return, which none of us are going to see. He is stealing from you to enrich himself, which is exactly what all these war profiteers have been doing for decades. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. And Canadian troops knew about this, and our government just said, just stay over there. Keep going. So that is just insane. That is just crazy. And it's also just even more crazier that as we're doing this, I see all the articles about rising anti-Semitism. I see all the articles about, Jew hatred. How there's not enough support system for Jewish communities, not much recognition for the Holocaust. At the same time, we're still funding neo-Nazis. At the same time, we applauded a Ukrainian Nazi war criminal who has killed Jewish and Polish citizens, and we applauded him twice in Parliament. So forgive me when I laugh. Forgive me when I don't believe a damn word when they say about the rise of anti-Semitism after all of this that we know about. Because they really just don't give a damn. This is just another stab in the back Mark Carney did to this nation. He wants it to crumble. He wants it to fall. And he's going to reconstruct it with his criminal buddies and enterprise to turn it into a fascist feudalist state. Just like a lot of these nations are doing. They don't care about you one bit. They don't care about your sovereignty, your freedom, your democracy. They don't care about their countries. Why do you think they would give a damn about Ukraine? Why do you think they give a damn about anything? But they will start giving a damn when they know they can get a good profit off it. When they know they could steal taxpayer money, lie to you, saying that this is a loan, a financial loan for Ukraine to help fight the war, and then take that money, take the opportunity to steal the resources, jack up prices, make things worse off for Ukraine, try to break up their country, hijack their resources, sell it off to private equitors, and they're going to laugh themselves to the bank while everyone else suffers. So, that's a nice little Christmas present from our beloved Prime Minister Mark Carney. Yeah.